Today, before we start, we need to review the trial balance. Companies prepare trial balances at regular intervals, and usually it's monthly. As we learned earlier, the trial balance is proof of the mathematical accuracy of the general ledger. We know that the total of the debit balances must always equal the total of the credit balances. There are different forms of trial balances. The one we have learned so far is called the formal trial balance. This is where we have the accounts listed according to their categories, assets, liabilities, owner's equity, and if we have any revenue or expenses. Another type is the list form. This is where there is simply a list of debits on one side, credits on the other side, and we have a total, and if the total is equal for the debits and for the credits, we're satisfied. The last kind is the machine tape form. This is where we take all the positive amounts, these are the debit amounts, and we list them on an adding machine. Then we take all the liabilities and owner's equities, anything that has a credit, and we apply a negative to it. And as we go through the list with the negatives, we will find out that at the end, if everything balances, we have a zero balance. The debits minus the credits will equal zero at the end if everything is balanced. We have to deal with errors from time to time, and there are different types of errors. One type of error is not posting the entire transaction. We just post part of it. Another type is forgetting to post either the debit or the credit part of a transaction. Another type is posting to the correct side, but we put it on the wrong account. The other type is to post to the wrong account altogether. Sometimes we have errors where we just simply calculate the balance incorrectly. We hit the wrong keys on the calculator and we end up with the wrong answer. Sometimes people transpose figures. 96 instead of 69, 74 instead of 47, 64 instead of 46, and so on. We need to have a system for locating trial balance errors. We know that the trial balance is a test to prove the mathematical accuracy. If the totals for the debits and credits are not equal, we must locate this error and correct it before we prepare the financial statements. There are 9 procedures for identifying errors in the trial balance, and these can be found on page 126 of your textbook, as well as on these slides. The first one is to determine the difference between the debit and the credit totals. The second step is to check to see if the difference is either 1 or 10 or 100 or 1,000 or 10,000, and so on and so on. And this might indicate that there's an addition or a subtraction error in the trial balance itself, or maybe back in one of the ledger accounts. Step 3. Check to see if an account in the ledger with the same balance as the difference has been omitted from the trial balance, so that if we have a difference between the debits and the credits of, say, $50, look back and see if there is an account that has a balance of $50, and maybe we just forgot to write it down. Step 4. Divide the difference between the debits and credits by 2. That amount may have been placed in the wrong column of the trial balance. So if our difference is 50 and we divide 50 by 2, that will make 25. We go back and look at the accounts and try and find if there is one that has an amount of 25, and we check to see whether or not we put that in the right column. Perhaps we put it as a debit when it should have been a credit, or vice versa. Step 5. If the difference between the debits and credits is divisible evenly by 9, the error may be due to a transposition. 97 written as 79, 64 written as 46, and so on. If a difference is divisible by 9 and once it's divided by 9 the quotient is 2, then the numbers that have been transposed have a difference of 2. So it could be 57 should have been 75, 46 could have been 64, but you would not have a difference of more than 2. So 37 and 73 would not be the difference for this type of example. Step 7. Check to see if the amount of the difference was overlooked when it should have been posted from a journal to the ledger. So now you have to go back to the journal, check all your journal entries to make sure that everything was posted. Step 8. If the error still escapes you, you need to check each balance in each account in the ledger all over again. Check the posting reference column of each journal to locate unposted items, and recheck each posting. Step 9. Finally, if you still have not found the error, don't worry about it. Just relax. Go on with something else. Return later with a clear mind and try again. Sometimes the answer is right in front of us, but we've been looking so carefully that we don't really see it. Understand the 9 procedures for identifying the errors, and let's do this following example. Here we have a list of debits and we have a list of credits. The total for the debits is $2,075. The total for the credits is $2,165. They don't equal, so we have a problem. First of all, if we follow all the examples and steps that we just learned, we want to find the difference between the two columns. So we take the larger amount, in this case the credit amount, $2,165. We subtract the debit amount, which is $2,075, and we get a difference of 90. So we are going to use this difference of 90 for all of our calculations to help find this error. Let's see first of all if the difference is evenly divisible by 9. In this case, 90 divided by 9 gives us an even number that we can all do in our heads, and it's 10. So perhaps we have a transposition error. We look through all the different values and check to see whether or not we could maybe have flip-flop the 150 to be 510. It doesn't make sense that we would transpose the 40 to 04. We could have flipped the 65 to be a 56, or it doesn't make sense to have the 02 to replace the 20 here in the number of 200. Or we could have flipped the 7 and the 6, or the 6 and the 5. But as we check these out, we find that the 560 that was written should have actually been 650, because when we transpose these, the difference is 90. And so once we cross out the incorrect value of 560, we get the new correct value, which is 90 more, and that will make a total of 2,165 for the debits, which matches the credits. So we have found the error in this example. So once you find an error, you have to go back to the journal and make some corrections. So an example could be that the amount should have been 500 rather than 50 as entered in the journal. So we can see here we have a journal entry that is incorrect. It says 50 when it should be 500. So how do we correct it? First, you have to cancel that original journal entry by doing the exact opposite. So our equipment was a debit of $50. The opposite of a debit is a credit. So in this new journal entry, we do the opposite. We have equipment as a credit, and the credit amount is 50. So this will zero out the mistake up here. We have to do the same for cash. Originally for cash we had a $50 credit. Now we have to do the opposite, which is a debit. So cash is a debit and the amount is $50. So this cash is canceled out by this cash, and this equipment is canceled out by this equipment. The description is very important because in here we say to cancel the June 2nd entry for check 141, it was the incorrect amount. That's the description that we put. The next step is that we have to re-enter the transaction correctly. So we go back to the June 2nd entry, we redo it for June 2nd, we put in the correct amount, $500 for equipment, debit, $500 credit for cash. Now we have to take a look at the accounting cycle as it exists so far at the end of this unit. Way back at the beginning we started learning about business transactions. We learned how to decide which accounts are affected and how to find the amounts and so on. Then we learned how to journalize. We journalized by writing the transactions into what we call a journal. Then we learned how to post. We take the information from the journal and we post it into the ledger. We learned also how to check the mathematical accuracy of all the items in the ledger in the journal by creating a trial balance. The trial balance, once it balances, will help us easily determine and easily produce the financial statements, the income statement and the balance sheet. Once the financial statements have been prepared, we are at the end of the accounting cycle and we have to start a new one, and we go through the whole cycle all over again. Your assignment today is to complete questions 15, 17, and 18 on the web, and complete exercises 6 to 9 from the textbook on page 133, and you answer those in the workbook.